Hey, everybody, welcome to Pod Casty For Me, the podcast about film, culture, politics, and Clint Eastwood, where we take every film directed by and or starring American filmmaker Clint Eastwood and explore how they speak to their moment and to this one. Podcast is hosted by two guys. I'm one of the guys. My name is Jake Serwin, and I was making scary The Grudge noises into the microphone, and now my throat hurts. So that's where I'm at.
Cool. I've been shocked into silence. Are you wearing a cool baseball shirt? I'm one of the guys. My name's Ian Ryan, by the way.
Sorry, to answer your other question.
No.
I did notice that it kind of looks like a baseball shirt. This is it's a knit, what would you call this?
It is real knit.
Oh man, it's a good show. No, it's like a knit polo shirt thing with like a pocket, and it opens up.
Wearing it unbuttoned.
Hey, I got it at your favorite store, Express for Men.
I did like to shop there in
This
college,
is like
even though I don't think I really
Ian.
liked any of the clothes. I think I read on GQ that you were supposed to shop there.
Yeah, that's all Ian could afford, a freaking gentleman's quarter. No, but a lot of the stuff in there is really expensive. Gentleman's Quarterly, that's what GQ stands for.
No, I got where it came from. I guess I just didn't know what a gentleman's quarter would be.
I famously had a subscription to Esquire magazine as a teenager,
as like
and was so confused. Yeah, really thrown off by like looking at these editorial spreads. I'm like, I guess like adult men are supposed to have like 5 new $10,000 watches a year, because it's like the year's best watches. Like, I'm supposed to. Am I gonna get all of these? Like, does my dad have the like? What the fuck? And so it took me a little while to figure out, ideology or whatever.
But
I'm there now, and that's
still
the show.
Figuring it out. Yep.
Yeah. Turns out. Welcome back to the show, Ian. It's been too long.
Surprised to hear you say this.
Nice to be rid of those pesky guests.
Yeah, got Will Smith mode. Just the two of us.
Not what the show is about today at all. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty well, man. How about yourself? I'm excited for this episode.
Me too. It's been far too long, and it's time once again for our segment, Taking a Gander, where Ian updates us on his coworker, the Goose.
Yes, it's finally time. Where I last left us, the Goose had 3 new daughters who would potentially eventually become his wives. Do you recall this?
Yeah, he had some new. They were guajolotes, right? Is that right?
Well, those are turkeys. Those were his partners in crime, but good memory.
Okay, those were his friends.
They have come and gone. They were consumed by the farmers as part of their beautiful life cycle. No, he had these little ladies that they got for him. He loved these ladies. He was extremely protective of them. I was excited to see this. One of them died, so he did a bad job. But now they're fully grown. They're wonderful, and he's pretty mean to them. This is related to our film today.
Sort of.
Kind of. They're just like around, and then somebody will get mad at him, like a dog will bark at him, and then he'll turn and get mad at them and kind of chase them into a corner. This displaced anxiety.
Makes sense.
Yeah, you know about this stuff.
I'm trying to make thinking about mail order bride, mail order bird. You know what I'm talking about?
Keep thinking.
Because actually, this pun is going to come up in a second, but this sort of difficulty with puns, written and spoken.
What about something like mallard order bride? Is that anything?
Now that is not. That's a different bird entirely.
It's true. All of a sudden, this guy, a couple goose updates. This guy thinks he's an expert.
Maillard order bride. That's when you cook them.
The browning effect. Yeah.
The browning. Yeah.
A couple guys have read a lot of cooking blogs.
Nope. Just saw it on YouTube.com. All of a sudden, it felt like every single person on YouTube who does cooking stuff learned about the Maillard reaction over and over again, which is just browning. You didn't learn anything. You learned a new word for the thing you already knew about. Thank you for the Goose update.
Sure.
Sounds like he's doing great.
Maybe I got some video of him in the rain yesterday, just kind of enjoying himself out there. Yeah. Rain.
Yeah.
It's in the remake with Sarah Michelle Gellar. Who's that? That's The Grudge.
Oh, yeah, that's good. I was trying to think of the Johnny Depp lizard movie, Rain Goose.
Oh, yeah. Good. That's
animals,
sort of so that's pretty good.
A Clint Eastwood analog in it, played by
does. Very
Timothy
specifically.
Oliphant, your friend from Justified.
From TV. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Ian. That was a great update on the goose. Genuinely glad to hear the goose is doing okay. It's time now for our signature segment, the 2 questions. And no, it still doesn't have a theme song. And you're being ungrateful. Want one?
Me, the audience, pretty applicable.
Ian, would you like to go first?
I would like to go first, despite the fact that I forgot because the guests have been doing it the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, you forgot to write one down.
Yep, but I have just some thoughts that I could turn into questions.
I have one for you. I actually wrote a question for you.
Great, anticipating my failures.
Now, we've actually recorded more than one episode since this, I think, since this happened, which this is in classic 2 questions fashion, a large indictment of you. But Jake, how was your trip to Las Vegas? Didn't fucking ask me about it.
We have recorded 1 episode since then.
Yeah, but it was long.
Yeah. No, this is great. And I would love to hear about it. It's a little unfair to the audience because we have talked about this. It's not like I didn't want to hear about it and I never brought it up in life. I just stonewalled your ass.
We're just, we got to strip mine our whole lives for content. Not that we're making any money.
Go ahead, mine your hole. Tell us what happened in Las Vegas.
Ian wants to see my minor hole? What?
No. That's where I got to draw the line.
This is the smaller one. He means the smaller one.
That. Yeah.
Vegas was fine. Thank you. I was just there overnight with a friend of the show, Jeremy Allison, to do a bunch of dumb bullshit and see the David Copperfield show, which is completely nuts. Recommend it highly to anyone with even a passing interest in Las Vegas magic shows. I'm not going to tell you a single damn thing about it because it's best experienced cold.
Cool.
And indeed, the air conditioning is a little strong in there.
Can I ask one question that you're also welcome to not answer? How old is David Copperfield now?
So fucking old. 2.
That's awesome.
2. Yeah.
That rules.
He's also like insanely rich. He doesn't need to do this anymore, but clearly he also does. He doesn't know how to do anything else. He's going through the patter so fast. Like it's often incomprehensible. The music and sound effects and stuff many times are just overwhelm what he's saying and it doesn't matter at all. He's been doing a version of this exact show, which is called Live the Impossible. I mean, it's David Copperfield : Live the Impossible. Since he's been doing a version of this show since 2013, and obviously like it's changed a lot in that time, but he's been doing 2 shows a night since 2013 with like, I think,
insane.
A Vegas length break for COVID. So like 3 weeks or whatever they did.
Right. Yeah.
And we also, so I found out that there was introduced sometime, I think in like 2005, there was a Fistful of Dollars official slot machine introduced. There's photos of Clint and then wife Dina Eastwood messing around with it at some kind of Las Vegas like gaming technology convention.
It's a wonderful photo you sent me.
Yeah, they debut all the new slot machines. And so I tried very hard. I went to like 8 or 9 casinos in the course of the trip because they're all right next to each other, looking for one. Never found one. Best I could do was from what I could tell, unlicensed, just generic cowboy themed slot machine called Rawhide.
Oh, hey. Pretty good.
Which is, I think, actionable.
Yeah, it's what, 75 years for public domain? We're coming up on it. It's got to be.
We are. That's insane.
Close.
That's actually really fucked up to say and think about.
Like basically the Great Gatsby now. Exactly.
A lot of blinking green lights over there in Vegas. Other colors too, but still. I took a bunch of photos. Now I very famously landed 8 Constance Woos on a Crazy Rich Asians slot machine and won $72.
Yeah, incredible.
Pretty exciting.
Now, I didn't want to spoil the moment for you, but I did want to ask, how far in the hole were you in that moment?
First of all, grow up.
Second of all,
pervert. This was pretty early into the trip. So, I mean, this is how I think of Vegas. I brought $100 cash to play slot machines, and I think of it like, when you go to Disneyland and you pay $120 or whatever it is, you don't say that you lost $120.
No, you don't.
You've spent that to get in. So I spent $100 to get into gambling land.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, I think the 72 brought me back up to like 140 or something. And then I, proceeded to lose most of it.
That's great. It's still like you found $72 at Disneyland, to continue your analogy. That'd be a pretty cool day.
Exactly. And I spent some of it on dinner. Like, I didn't really keep track because it was just the cash I had, and I used it until it disappeared.
Let's go, Dub Boys. What did you get yourself for dinner?
Ooh, we did kind of a 2-part dinner because I did a little snack before David Copperfield. So we're talking a $13 slice of pizza. From a place. I took a picture. This is a place in MGM Grand, I think, because that's where Copperfield is. So it's called Bonanno's New York Pizzeria. You probably remember this place from when you lived in New York City.
It was everywhere. Yep.
It's right by the Brad Garrett's Comedy Club. A lot of Casper stuff came up because I took a picture of a lot of the licensed slot machines that I walk by. And one of the most common, I would say probably the most common licensed slot machine, Crazy Rich Asians is all over the place, but one of the most common licensed slot machines that I saw was themed to Hot Stuff the Little Devil, who is another Harvey Comics character.
Are you jerking me around? Is this true?
No. Yeah, it is. I mean, I think
because it costs like 90 cents to get the license.
I think it's that. And also it just like, it's a cute little devil. So I don't know if nearly anyone is saying, oh, look, it's Hot Stuff besides me and Jeremy, but like,
sure,
they're all over the place. I'll show you. It's Hot Stuff's Wicked Wheel.
Oh,
and it's
true. He's confirming this with Exhibit A.
Tons of them. I saw a great Sam Raimi Spider-Man one. There was a really good, extraordinarily old alien-themed slot machine that I liked quite a bit. Little Shop of Horrors, those are pretty popular. Wizard of Oz, you can find those pretty easy. Anchorman, 2 different Rockies, which I lost a pretty good amount of money on. Walking Dead, Hobbit, and Lord of the Rings. Most of the different James Bond movies have their own individual, which I think is interesting.
This makes sense to me. It's kind of in the gambling greater universe.
My trip to Vegas was fine, thank you. I could not sleep at all because it was cold in the room, no matter what I did at the air conditioner, and they give you, on the bed, they give you one sheet and one heavier sheet.
This feels like user error to me, I gotta tell you.
There's no blankets in there.
The hotel room?
There's no fucking blankets in there. I missed my wife, girlfriend, but, wife. There was, neon light streaming in around the curtains. I was all wired from Diet Coke, free Diet Coke, and David Copperfield's Illusions.
Went to a magic show and got too excited to sleep. That's cool.
Exactly. How was your trip to Vegas?
It was great. It happens, what year are we in?
Have you been
9 years
before,
ago?
Right? Okay.
Yeah. I went once, stayed at the Quad, the famous cheap hotel on the Strip.
Interesting. Yeah, I was at the Planet Hollywood, which is
that's movies.
Formerly the Aladdin, and
that's also
the
movies.
Aladdin name, it was the Aladdin for 4 years before the Aladdin Corp fell apart and Planet Hollywood came in, and so they redid everything with Planet Hollywood, but they kept the Aladdin's Morocco themed indoor mall with a big, Indiana Jones style sailing ship from the 40s that says
got a bunch of cargo on there, wooden crates. Cool.
So just inexplicably there's basically an Indiana Jones market in the Planet Hollywood. Also, there is no Planet Hollywood in there. It's in the MGM Grand. Anyway, Thank you for asking.
You're so welcome. Your turn to hit me with one of these questions.
Are you aware of any of your parents' previous serious partners? Do you know about your dad's high school girlfriend?
I am. I'm going to go ahead and just tell the story, then double check that this isn't causing any type of problems for anybody.
That's fine.
I have heard since I was a child, well, not that young, but relatively childish, that my parents met because my mother was dating the like head residents. Only.
Sorry.
What a life I would have led. No. The head resident or the head fellow in my father's medical school program, or I guess post-medical school program. So his boss, basically, his team leader. Yeah, that's right. The head boy. And they...
Well, we used to call you around the door. It's fine to be that. I'm backing off.
Good. Yeah. Getting dangerously close to Ian McShane style insult here. So they, as far as I know, whatever sanitized version I've received, they met, they were friends, and they had a kindling romance. And of course, my mom left her boyfriends respectfully ahead of time so they could begin dating each other.
Nice.
I also, when receiving a bunch of, this is very close to our film, receiving a bunch of books that my mom had kept in our attic for decades, largely her college and post-college books, I found a book with a dedication at the beginning to my mother from John. Really lovely dedication. And she told me that it was somebody she had dated. And it was, I did not have at all the experience of the children. This film, these losers, these nimrods. I was excited to know that my mother had other chapters of her life. What about you?
That John Wilkes Booth. No, your mom's a normal age and has not dated any assassins that I know of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know of a lot of names. Like, I know my dad dated a woman named Kendra in high school, and they're still friends. And like my stepmom when my dad goes back to Michigan to see all his high school friends, like Kendra and her husband and kids are on the itinerary to go say hello, which I think is cool. Nice. And I know that my mom dated a guy named Thaddeus in high school, and that it ended poorly. And I believe there may have been some kind of vandalism to a rag top of a convertible involved in the breakup.
On whose part?
Will not say.
Cool. I like this.
And also, my parents used to be married to each other, and they are not.
I was going to let anymore. You reach that in the fullness of time.
Yeah, it's none of my business, but I know that my, acknowledging that one's parents are human beings and they've had lives before you, you're part of the tapestry of their usually more boring life than the ones depicted although I guess
unfortunately
boredom is a big part of this, but that's a big part of growing up, of becoming an adult.
Yeah, I think this film hits on plenty of common things that people feel when they have to go through this experience. But best of all, I think I appreciate Meryl Streep's character of Francesca. She gives a speech near the beginning of the film about how not being known by your loved ones is the saddest outcome of all in your life. And I think for that reason, I wish we could move towards a place of just talking about what people had been through.
Yeah,
none of this spoiling an image crap. That's for babies.
I agree very strongly. I think, to me, one of the things I was sort of resistant. By the way, we're talking about the Bridges of Madison County. We haven't said that in the podcast yet. One of the things that was frustrating to me, because I was sort of resistant to the film's charms for a lot of the runtime. I was told by a lot of people, including guests on this show, that this was gonna, knock me on my ass. And then Matt Damon said something very similar about Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States. Do you remember that from
recently?
Good Will Hunting?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You got to read this book. It'll knock you on your ass.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, I was resistant to the film, I think in part because this kind of like, oh, holy shit, I can't believe this person that I've just met feeling I think of as something that I moved past when I turned 22 or whatever. And I've been with the same partner since I was 22. And I mean, I had one of these type of feelings with this person, but then also I wasn't encumbered in another relationship. So we just kept dating each other. And now we, have cats and like.
But now perhaps it's hard for you to imagine having that feeling, not just because you love your wife, but because you feel like you've seen it all or what?
I found it sort of uncomfortable. And I've talked about this before, but like, I feel one of the things that I like about being in a very long-term relationship is that I think one of the purposes of being alive is to learn how other people work and to try to like find out how another person's mind works and live with them, see if you can get any better at like living amongst other people, and being in a close relationship is like the most intense form of that. I don't want to like learn a new person. I like the one that I've been working on learning quite a bit, and you know, I'm almost there, I think. But there's always new mysteries to unlock. She's always out getting into God knows what. And you know, now I gotta learn about perfume, which is pretty cool. It turns out perfume is pretty cool, but you know, your partner gets a hobby, and you're like, well, I kind of have a hobby now too, because I'm gonna hear about the hobby. I should get invested in this so that it's interesting to me. And it turns out it is very interesting. Perfume people are fucking freaks.
Yep.
We've talked about this. If you go to Fragrantica and read some of those reviews,
man,
psycho.
What? Yeah, this is the scum and villainy hive that really exists on our earth.
One of the great things about dating somebody is you get to learn about all kinds of new insane people websites that you wouldn't have found out about before. That's mostly the message of the film, I think.
To your point about relationships being a crucible for your ability to maybe prioritize your interest in other humans or your interest in participating in the great social experiment over your own interests all the time. I think it's right, but I think the film also, for me, is reflecting on whether or not this is a representation of how the relationship will continue. And we will get to this much later in the discussion of the film. But I think what I liked about it, and the reason that I think I was maybe won over more quickly than you, is it, to me, pretty clearly is saying this is just one of those special moments that happens precisely because it's so limited. The limitations allow them to breach these barriers much more quickly. And I feel like I've had those instances, and I think it's special to feel like you can, in a very corny, like Tinder type way, move past small talk quickly because you will truly never see this person again in your whole life.
It's in that classic, the subgenre of the kind of the brief encounter movie.
Yes.
Of which, of course, Brief Encounter is one, but there's also, you know, your
Before Sunrise.
Your Lost in Translation, I think, counts.
Mm-hmm. I think so too.
I would even include like the road trip comedy often has sometimes a heterosexual version of this.
Yeah, I think that's right.
But the kind of quick, intense romance, and then you kind of return to your life, your regular life, your real life. And these I find were more effective to me when I was like a younger person and hadn't really had any kind of relationship outside of an intense crush on someone I never spoke to, you know?
Uh-huh. Yep.
But also I think the film is much more complicated than just saying, isn't it nice when you meet a tall, dark stranger? But first, before we get any further into our conversation, we need to tell the folks where they can watch the film. Now, this film, The Bridges of Madison County, directed by Clint Eastwood. This is a famous film, and it's available in all those usual places where you usually find a film. If you're here in North America, that is. Well, I guess you're in North America. If you're here in the United States, that is. Mm-hmm. Now, Ian, if someone is down there in the other United States of Mexico.
That's right. Hey, this guy knows about geography.
I sure do. About special names. Where can they find The Bridges of Madison County on Mexican internet?
On Mexican internet, they're going to find it free on Max.
Ooh.
Paid on Microsoft, paid on Amazon, paid on Apple TV.
Now, longtime listeners of the podcast will know that I used to do this bit where I would say that in Mexico, it's actually called Manzana TV because of how Spanish is the primary language spoken down there. But I don't do that anymore because it's kind of rude. But sometimes someone might wander into the studio and say it for me. And I think someone's coming in right now.
Oh, hey.
Manzana TV. Manzana TV.
Now, this is someone who's, I think, thematically related to this film.
Manzana TV.
Feels close. Feels within reach. Give it to me one more time.
Manzana TV. Manzana TV.
Nope. I'm losing it.
Nothing.
Who is this?
This is Kevin Ryan, your younger brother.
How did you do this?
I figured, the film is in part about learning something you didn't know about a family member. And I got his phone number from one of our mutual friends who had it. What do you mean? How did I do? I texted him. Whoa. I should say, Kevin, extremely game, basically had no questions. Once I asked him to do this, I said, hey, will you help me mess with your brother? And he said, yes.
Yeah, sounds right.
And yeah, it sent me some
takes,
phone recordings within about 2 minutes of me asking him.
Now you're learning about the differences in my family, huh? You've already developed a closer texting relationship with him than with me.
I sure have. I thought about trying to ask very kindly of your mother, but then I realized that I don't know if you want her to know about the podcast, so I decided to hold off out of deference to you.
That's right. That's correct. Jake has correctly chosen, probably not by coincidence, the only one of my brothers who's aware of the existence of this program.
Oh, okay, good. So he already knows.
Yep.
Cool. Well, clearly he has not listened because he texted me to ask how to pronounce manzana. So.
Great. I gotta say, in full disclosure, that when you said that it was my brother, I briefly thought that you were trying to tell me that you had cobbled together enough clips of his voice to upload to some type of AI program.
Yeah, I've transcendenced your brother, Kevin.
Yeah, you deathed his ass.
I did.
But no, this makes much more sense.
And so now that you're on your back foot, I feel more comfortable
exactly
proceeding with the film. This is The Bridges of Madison County, directed by Clint Eastwood. It was released June the 2nd, 1995, 1 week after Casper, which we, I believe, discussed on our episode last week, which is, of course, the same day that Johnny Mnemonic came out. Great film.
Yep.
And then this week, it's basically Bridges is the only real major release. Again, like a big ass summer release date, June 2nd. And so, it's in between Casper, and then a week after this, you get Congo.
Ooh.
Did you remember that Congo was written by John Patrick Shanley?
No,
the fucking Moonstruck guy.
Yeah. Whoa.
I mean, he's in Doubt. Speaking of Meryl. Yeah, wacky stuff. This is a very, very highly regarded film, Cahiers du Cinema, named it the best film of the 1990s.
Those are some guys who know about repressed housewife romances, too. They know their stuff.
But they did not name it the best film of 1995 when that task came around. And they also, it tied with the best film of the 90s. It tied with Goodbye South, Goodbye, the Ho Xiaoshen film, and Carlito's Way.
Huh.
Those guys are always up to something.
They're all over the place, these guys. Yeah.
They're committed to making you go,
Yep. So what happens when you eat too many cigarettes or whatever they do.
They do be doing that. Did you read the book?
I didn't. You sent it to me and I said, wow, this is so great. We'll give you some real context. And then I started and said, never mind, not interested.
Yeah, it's quite poor. I resemble Meryl Streep in so many ways, but one of those is that I could not finish the book. She also put it down. She, I think, called it a crime against literature or something.
Hell yeah.
We got to talk about the book real quick. So it's a book by a guy named Robert James Waller, who looks like E.T.'s dad. He is a native Iowan. He was the dean of the School of Management at the University of Northern Iowa and decided when he was 53 to write his first novel. Supposedly in 2 weeks, he wrote this thing. And it was published in 1992, first sort of self-published as something like Love in Black and White or some dog shit title like that.
Yep.
Then Warner Books actually got a hold of it, which is how Amblin and Steven Spielberg and Kathleen Kennedy got their eyes on the manuscript, and they purchased the rights for $25,000 pre-publication, which turned out to be a really good move on their part, because the book becomes the top seller of 1993. It is on the New York Times bestseller list for over a year. Oprah calls it her favorite book of the year.
Huh. Now, this is after the release of the film, or this is prior to?
This is prior. This is 93.
Okay, so this isn't just energy that they're picking up and kind of carrying sympathetically.
This thing was a genuine sensation, despite very poor reviews, some of which are obviously very funny. They're all very snobbish. They're, snooty literati folks turning their noses up at something sort of unsophisticated, but also, it is not that great. We've got, let's see, Washington Post calls it trite. Library Journal complains of contrived, unrealistic dialogue. Frank Rich in the New York Times says that it has been trashed for its hallmark prose by some of the few critics who have deigned to open it. Chicago Tribune says it's insipid, fatuous. It's an insipid, fatuous, mealy-mouthed, third-rate soap opera with a semi-fascist point of view.
Shit. What? I don't even know what that last part is in reference to.
Yeah.
Okay.
LA Times calls it porn for yuppie women. So, I mean, part of the difference between the book and the film, and I think the crucial decision that makes the film great where the book is bad, is the decision to change the focus, change this perspective from Robert Kincaid, the male character, the itinerant National Geographic photographer, to Francesca, the housewife, upon whose house he stumbles.
This is one of the only things I read about the book, and it did seem crazy to me that this book would be such a hit and also not about the interesting character in the film.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you noticed, but the main guy in this book, his name is the same as the author's name, which like, buddy, what the fuck? So, okay, let me
But
play.
the character's a cool, swashbuckling, hot artist. There's no way that could be.
Yeah, who with like a long-legged man with who wears jeans and a vest,
swept back gray hair.
Let me play you an electronic press kit that I found. Okay. I'm just going to play this for you now.
Robert James Waller has touched the hearts of readers across the country with his best-selling novel, The Bridges of Madison County. Now, Robert further explores the book's characters and themes and makes his recording debut on the album The Ballads of Madison County, released by Atlantic Records.
She was a dancer with dreams of her own, and he was a dreamer.
Author, photographer, economics professor, folk musician. Robert James Waller has been called by some a true Renaissance man.
Oh, God.
Yeah, this is set to footage of him dressed exactly like the character of Robert Kincaid, strolling through a covered bridge with his acoustic guitar.
Look, naked cash grab aside, it wasn't horrible. That was one of his in the background.
It's medium, and I'm sure he got like all the best people to help him with that. But I mean, the man is so far up his own ass that he's like become an ass with some of a guy sticking out of it. You know what I mean? Like he's more ass than contents. So anyway, we leave Robert James Waller behind. I don't want to talk about him anymore. Spielberg is thinking about making this movie. This is like A Perfect World. This is another near miss Spielberg directed film starring Clint Eastwood, which we're probably not going to get, which is very sad. So he thinks about directing it with Clint as the star, but just like with A Perfect World, this is around the time of Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, his big 93. He's tired. He wants to hang out and produce Animaniacs and Casper and Freakazoid and Tiny Toons and, put his thumb up his ass or whatever, which is fine. He's allowed to do that.
That's good to do.
So then Bruce Beresford is brought onto the project to direct.
I know Bruce Beresford.
Starring. He's an Australian director. He did Breaker Morant. He did Tender Mercies, which is very similar in tone to this film. He did Crimes of the Heart.
A lot of films I haven't seen.
And then most recently he had directed Driving Miss Daisy, which was a big hit that won an unearned Academy Award. I will say also that Tender Mercies is a wonderful film with a fairly similar, like, gentle tone, no real villain, man and a woman in their middle age sort of finding that they can meet each other's needs. Although in that film I don't think there's a husband involved. I think they're both single and ready to mingle. That's Robert Duvall and Tess Harper. Great film. Recommend it highly. But Beresford, I think, so they've done this rewrite on the script to center the Francesca character. And Beresford, I think, wants to do another rewrite to undo some of that. And Clint and Steve give him the boot. And now Clint is going to direct it himself.
Now, I can very much see this interaction. And I think there's still Spielberg present in the film. But even while watching it, having seen the Amblin slate at the beginning, whatever, I was asking myself whether I preferred it this way or whether I would prefer the best imagined Spielberg version. Because I will say that this is primed for either like the scene in Jaws that's much talked about, where he's sitting at the kitchen table and the divorce is sort of like hanging in the air. Basically, it's just like so ambient that it's a character on screen effectively. Or would this be maudlin Spielberg?
Who's divorce? There's no divorce in Jaws. Are you thinking of E.T.?
No, but I think no. I mean Jaws. I mean the impending like failed marriage aspect of not their actual divorce.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean I think Spielberg, his greatest strength and his greatest weakness are that he perpetually sees things from the eyes of a child.
Yep. I agree with this.
I don't think he would be the right director for this film. I haven't seen Always, which is his, I think, closest analog in terms of like an adult romance.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit we could say that The Fabelmans is a whole film about one of the kids in this circumstance.
Yeah, The Fabelmans is sort of the story of Michael Johnson. And it's a masterpiece, by the way, and Ian's nodding.
Don't care to return to this. Now, you said there were several rewrites. You're right.
That's you. You were agreeing with me and talking over yourself somehow. Anyway, sorry.
In which of the rewrites did they put Francesca has a Stanley Tucci Big Night accent for the whole film?
This is a great question. So let's talk about the casting. So Clint Eastwood, of course, plays Robert Kincaid. And as Francesca Johnson, the Italian woman who is brought to Iowa by a GI after the war, there were obviously all the heavy hitters were in talks. We've got Angelica Houston was considered, and of course she will show up soon in Bloodwork.
Yep.
Susan Sarandon, Jessica Lange, your big powerhouse actresses of the period.
What about an Italian woman who is the daughter of extremely famous actor and director?
Yes, Isabella Rossellini was strongly considered, as was Catherine Deneuve, who would have been at least interesting, and Lena Olin also, who's I think Swedish, was considered. So. She's if not very continental.
I will say that Isabella Rossellini would have been too scary somehow for this movie. And I say that as a huge fan of hers.
She might have been too young also.
Oh, that's also true. She's notably, this is 95.
She's just been in Death Becomes Her with Meryl Streep as sort of an avatar of a more youthful looking person. Like her
it's true. Somebody who has denied the ravages of time.
She's also in Big Night.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that part. Yeah. Which hasn't come out yet, to be clear.
With Martin Lawrence when he falls into the mini golf.
Moat. This must have been. I in rewatching that film recently, I was wondering how tough it must have been for her to.
Big Night or Black Night? Because I was talking about Black Night for a while there. I don't know if you didn't notice. One of the best parts of Black Night is when, in order to distract someone, Martin Lawrence's character evidently decides to point behind the guy and go, "Behold!" and the guy has no choice but to turn around.
It's like that's a cheat having code. Fun with tropes. That's good.
Honestly, Black Knight is a good time on the couch. Like
I
wouldn't pay
you
for
presented
it.
this thesis to me in 2013 originally, and I think you convinced me.
Well, I was going to the Renaissance Fair.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, you were saying?
Oh, I was just saying that hard for Isabella Rossellini to be on the set of Big Night, listening to these two lovely gentlemen do insane voices.
I have not seen Big Night. Nor have I seen Diner. I think of them as
both good.
About
I would say
food. I should watch both. I mean, I would like to. They're on the list. So Meryl Streep has been in discussion, certainly in the Clint biographies that I've been reading. In the disparaging Pat McGilligan one, he quotes a Malpaso person in the know who says something about how you always end up with like no name actors in these Malpaso movies, at least until the 90s. And their example was you'd start talking about Meryl Streep and end up with Patricia Clarkson, which first of all, back off.
Good.
She's
pick.
great.
Yeah, she is great. Yeah.
But also, apparently, Meryl was a huge inspiration to Frances Fisher. Frances Fisher was a big Meryl fan, and Clint just like wanted Meryl for this role. Meryl's in an interesting place. I've been reading, speaking of Cahiers du Cinema, I've been reading this monograph on Meryl from the Anatomy of an Actor series by Karina Longworth.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and I emailed her to say that she should start a film podcast because I think she'd be really good at it. But it's quite good. And I mean, are you a Meryl person?
You know what? I'm not really. And that was one of the things holding me back. I think sounds like much like yourself, sort of just lumped this in with like Steel Magnolias type indulgence.
I mean, it is a women's picture, which I believe I used that term on this show before, and you made fun of me.
Yeah,
despite it being a real like industry term from the golden age of Hollywood, like
the industry, a classic, reputable source for treating women well.
I'm just saying I didn't come up with the phrase.
And
I think Clint also is often his project is to kind of put his own stamp on the classic Hollywood formulas. And so this one feels like him doing the Clint version of, A Brief Encounter or any of those pictures that are aimed at a female audience.
I'm bravely saying that I just think of The Brief Encounter as one of the best films of all time. And I look,
Ian's saying that you shouldn't make films aimed explicitly at women. They don't deserve them. They have to come and enjoy the films that are for a general audience.
Yeah, that is one way of twisting my words very effectively.
Yeah.
I guess I mean, and I will say this to Clint's credit, that even if he is doing an existing genre, one that is maybe cynically aimed at a specific audience for monetary purposes, generally, I think many of these films are condescending in their treatment of women or their assumption of how easily they can be packaged or repackaged. And I don't think this film is doing that at all.
Well, I will push back on that. I mean, that is certainly the case in many of the bad entries in this.
The bad ones.
Tradition. But, for example, Molly Haskell, longtime film critic and also excellent biographer of Steven Spielberg, by the way, mentioned once that as much praise and worship is lavished on New Hollywood, the 70s and 80s were among the worst times for actresses to get anything of any substance to do. And you actually, we think of the 70s and 80s as moments of a lot of progress for women in the workplace, women in the home, women in politics. But in film, especially, there are a lot more films focused on and starring women with and female characters with strong interiority in the 40s and 50s than in the 70s and 80s. So things are always complicated, aren't they, Ian? And actually, when you look at it the way that I just said, I'm more right than you.
You are pretty smart and good. Yeah. I don't deny this thing's being complicated, and I actually think there's more profundity and more importance to that statement than you're giving it. Semi-ironically, I think it's good to not let ourselves be dragged into assumptions about when was good for women or what's good for women or anybody.
I think this is kind of what the film is getting at as well.
Fuck, he's right.
But we'll get to that. Right now. But so Clint wants Meryl, and Meryl's at this interesting point where she has kind of, and Karina Longworth points this out, she's kind of tried a sort of Hollywood experiment where she literally moves her family to Hollywood. They'd been living in Connecticut because she's a very New York type actress. She moves her family to Hollywood and does big Hollywood movies. She tries, Your Death Becomes Her. She does this very strange sounding whitewater rafting movie before this, the title of which escapes me. Let me figure it out. The River Wild, where she went on a Hollywood diet and got a Hollywood personal trainer and apparently is, fairly jacked in the movie, I guess, at least Meryl style, and had a bad time doing this big special effects action film, and it also didn't do that well.
Yeah.
And so this is a moment where Meryl's fuck all that shit. And also, none of these movies have done that well. And she gets sent the script. She hates the book, but she likes the script because the character is strong. She wanted to work with Clint. Everybody always wants to work with Clint. And she, at the cast and crew dinner, so they shot the film in chronological order because Clint wanted the relationship to sort of develop between the performers. It seems like a fine thing to do. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it makes it accessible as a piece of labor. And
they, the cast and crew, they have like a dinner the night before the shoot started, and Clint and Meryl have not really met yet. And he apparently, they're saying their pleasantries, and he apparently says, "I hope you're not going to do a big accent thing." And she didn't reveal the accent until the following day when they're shooting their first encounter. And she says, "Are you supposed to be in Iowa?" But he didn't say anything, so she just kept going.
All right.
Well, what do you think of the accent?
I stopped noticing it quickly, which I think is as near to a compliment as I can get.
I think I sort of interrupted you, which would be the first time on the show, but yeah. I'm not a big Meryl guy. I lump her in with your Gary Oldmans and your Johnny's Depp, all these people for whom like the transformation is often the appeal.
When in doubt, go big, effectively.
Because I just find it distracting. Like now I'm just watching this person like do an impression of not even necessarily a real person, but they're like, it's so loud. I'd much rather watch like a movie star, a Clint type where it's always sort of a variation on their natural charisma, than one of these kind of chameleon types, with the exception of Daniel Day-Lewis, I think, because he's just so strange that I find him compelling to look at.
There's a level at which I would say Nicolas Cage I enjoy, as kind of like an art object of a human, which is not the same thing as being a real person in film necessarily, but it's still interesting to watch inevitably.
I agree. I found Meryl's accent did not bother me.
Yep.
It also reminded me quite a bit of a tour guide, an Italian tour guide who I listened to for like 3 hours on a bus from Rome to Pompeii, speaking very, very heavily accented English and like too close into a microphone that I think I got like 40% of it. But she was talking about how she had been asked by some American GIs to take them back to Monte Cassino to see the graves of their fallen brothers, and they were telling stories about knifing fellow 18-year-olds in the heart or whatever. And
it's like a Defy Bloods moment she had.
Exactly. And then also she gave us great recommendations for pasta restaurants. So
it's the place for it.
Place called Shea Black. Shout out to Shea Black.
Oh, all right.
In Positano over there in Italy. The episode today is sponsored by Shea Black, sponsored by Razor Clams. Shea Black. Anyway, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, there are many films that Meryl is in that I like a lot, and I would not dare to say that I have never enjoyed her performances before. But the thing you're saying about the accent is correct, because it's recognizably Italian. It has a function within the film to remind you of her origins and her out of placeness, which could have slipped off screen easily. So I understand why she's doing it. And it's fine. So I think I understand everything she's saying, literally. So it's functional at the very least.
She apparently based the performance on Anna Magnani in Pasolini's Mamma Roma.
Oh, watching Pasolini.
Yeah. She gained a little bit of weight for the role, apparently, which I think just entailed not doing crazy Hollywood shit to herself anymore and just like looked more like a person.
Not a Ryan Gosling, Lovely Bones style move.
I mean, I like that she, she's got some careful wrinkles in the film. She looks like a person.
She does.
They both have imperfect teeth, which I appreciate. Both her and Clint. They do a lot of smiling. He probably does more smiling in this film than in any other that we've seen.
Yeah, the fact that you talked about Clint basically being a variation of himself, which I believe to be true. I'm going to sign on with you there. He's exceptionally boyish in this film. He's exceptionally vulnerable. in a way that is charming, but also is part of the flaws of his character. So this is maybe my favorite performance of his so far.
Well, I think that's totally valid. I would say that my favorite is probably anytime he's with Clyde. Because you just see a man genuinely engaging with it.
I don't know if that counts as acting, but I could see just your favorite experience of watching this man.
We do get this whole retelling of a obviously bullshit story of him romancing a gorilla in the film, which I thought was quite pointed. I mean, also this is a film where Clint rides around in a beat up pickup truck in a rural area.
It's true. We're part of the way there.
Let's talk through the plot of the film briefly. I mean, there's not much to describe. We get it starts in 1995 or so when some adult children are returning to their mother's farmhouse to carry out her final wishes, and it turns out that she wants her ashes to be scattered at Roseman Bridge. Were you taken aback by the disgust that one of them expresses for? Actually, I think it's Michael's wife expresses for the very notion of cremation.
I was not taken aback. I was taken back to my childhood among a variety of different Christian people for whom this might have been a normal reaction. I had kind of forgotten that this was a type of way people might feel about cremation, but I recalled that I very much had seen people react like this. Like, it was not just like selfish in this case, and they talk about her like not being able to visit her or whatever, but something that might be against God. Yeah,
God, who of course really regrets letting Prometheus get a hold of that pesky fire. Wish he could still do it himself. I will say that I'm just looking at a list here. Iowa is 36th in the nation in terms of cremation rates.
All right.
As of 2014. Nevada. Now, I think some of that might be accidental. That's number one. Just it's so
Nevada's
hot.
top. Yeah.
I was just there. It was very warm.
And it was you were close.
And also number 2, Washington, which is of course where it turns out their mother had a powerful but brief romance back in 1965, 30 years prior, when her husband, Dick Johnson, and children, Michael and Caroline, had gone to the Illinois State Fair for 4 days to show off a prized steer. Interestingly, in the book, Francesca notes how unusual it is to her to raise and care for a cow for a year and a half and then go show it off and have it slaughtered. But in the film, I believe the cow comes back safe and sound.
It does, yeah. Carolyn can't bear to sell it. I was reflecting on this as maybe the beginnings of Francesca's rebellion against traditional motherhood in allowing Carolyn. But I will say that part of what we see here is what is specific about small town morals, small town like moray enforcement in the film. And although I think in general, tough to be a woman or any marginalized person in a small town, there are specific things that I think kind of slip by or get flipped, so like allowing women to participate in farm activities, rough, outside, dirty work is maybe one of them. Right. So maybe it's not that surprising, but I was wondering if that was an element of this, that we could see her kind of making her small little rebellious moves.
It's first inkling we get, or one of the first inklings we get, that as an immigrant, she has kind of an outsider's perspective on America. But right after her husband and children have left, green pickup truck pulls up, and out strides lanky silver fox Robert Kincaid, who is a photographer for the National Geographic magazine, who is in the area to photograph some of the famous covered bridges, and he's looking for directions to find a particular bridge that he knows is in the neighborhood, which I think is very funny because it's not really it's like, anyway. And she says, she starts giving him directions and basically says it'd be easier if she showed him. She is resisting giving into this too much. I mean, it's obvious that they're both attracted to each other from the get-go, but they go to the bridge. He's kind of flirting. She is unsure what to do with her lust.
Yeah, we get the sense, or at least I got the sense, that this is kind of something that he has done before, although this will be contested later in the film. But he feels very comfortable, like he would just speak this way regardless, and it comes off as charming. And she, from the beginning, is very aware of this not being what she's supposed to be feeling.
I'm going to quote Clint here. All right. A long time ago, I used to travel around like Kincaid in a pickup truck. In my early days as a director, I'd get in a pickup truck by myself, drive up to the Sierras, come upon a location I'd like, make some arrangements to use it later for the production. I didn't run across any Italian housewives, but I could have. I will admit, there's certainly a bit of myself in Kincaid. I appreciate that he has given the most specific type of housewife. Yeah. I didn't run across any women who had been brought as war brides from Bari, Italy. But,
right. So I guess I'm pretty different from this guy. That's where the similarities end.
I mean, obviously the resonances with Clint's, at this point, famous, unusual personal life are clear. Also, he, at this point, has a 3-year-old, 2-year-old daughter named Francesca.
Oh, good point. This did not occur to me. Yeah.
And, the character's name's Francesca in the book. That's fine. You're not going to... He, I think, is involved with the project before the child is born. I wonder how much the name was influenced by that, but also her mother's name is Frances. So,
Seems like a more direct line.
By the way, Frances Fisher... Shout out, Comrade Francis posted a photo with Adam Conover on the picket line earlier today.
She's always good for a little action,
She's in the negotiating committee of SAG.
I didn't know that. Very cool.
This out from her ball cap she was wearing.
Ooh.
Unless she borrowed it. Francis, come on the show. Come on podcast. Or know what? Go on Chapo. I don't care. Whatever. Just like just talk to Marin or
Get
something.
out there. We'd love to hear you.
Yeah. I mean, the film... it's one of gestures and small moments. So like, I don't know if we need to describe it. Blow
I want to let you finish the whole. I was trying to hold back, did a bad job, but
that's fine.
To get through it, because historically this has not been one of our strong points of allowing the readers to be on board.
Let's go through it. Okay,
finish it off.
So it's hot. He's got some, and this is one of my favorite moments of the book. He's got this cooler that he brings with him because he needs to keep his film cold, which I didn't realize was a thing. But he also brings some beers and sodas in it. So she goes and gets a 7-Up. This is like a really great actorly moment of showing like unbearable horniness when the way Meryl
a lot of the film is this
chugs this 7-Up. She's like, Jesus Christ, I need a cigarette kind of thing.
And at this point, she's already been trying to resist just looking at him a lot, which is a big element to this.
She invites him back to the house for like an iced tea or something, and then says, why don't you stay for dinner? Obviously there's an attraction there. And they things go slowly. He helps her with dinner. He's a different kind of man than her husband. He's talking to her about the husband. His intentions are pretty clear from the get-go. She watches him rinse himself off with the hose outside. As in the book, he dries himself with his t-shirt, which is such a... This reminded me, I have to find this. Lisa Simpson, ideal boy, jeans, no shirt. Anyway, I don't need the exact quote, but I remember on The Simpsons, Lisa Simpson once was sort of describing her ideal boy who would ride around the ranch in jeans with his shirt off, talking about poetry or something like that. And it was just funny how exactly this turned out to be Robert Kincaid from the Bridges of Madison County.
Yeah, I mean, these scenes are very effective for a couple reasons. One, because she's getting to turn the tables a little bit. And I will say that in preparation for our episode, I read for the first time a bunch of The Second Sex, the famous Simone de Beauvoir text, foundational feminist text.
I texted you, don't worry, buddy. I'm sure it'll happen. It couldn't have just been a fluke.
You did.
Imagining that this book is some kind of a manual. What did you learn from Simone?
I learned a lot. And first of all, I gotta unnecessarily recommend this book to people. It is 800 pages long, so I can understand being intimidated. And I kind of assume...
and like an AI woman or something?
Yeah, that's right.
Whatever. Doesn't matter. Fuck off.
Yeah. You can kind of skip the first half unless you're really into literature and cultural history and just get into the discussion of what it's like to be alive, not as the woman, because one thing I want to really credit this book for, I assumed pretty cynically that this was going to be a classic second wave feminist text, and that it would just talk about like what accidentally be essentialist in the opposite direction, right? And say like, well, women aren't like that. But in fact, the book does a great job of just saying some women are this and some women have these experiences and some, etc. So one of the things it talks about is how being turned into an object of sexualization, of like physical beauty, happens early enough for women that it becomes both this burden and, you know, sort of like a gilded cage of like their only goal is to be attractive to other people. And then, of course, that also leaves you feeling empty because you're not satisfying anything else in your life. Pretty classic stuff. But here we have Francesca getting to sexualize Clint, sexualize Mr. Kincaid here, but in a way that is weirdly like a question. You talked about him being different than her husband. I think that's a big part of it. He's also different than her. So I think she's simultaneously looking at him as a sex object and as like a person that she would have liked to have been, or maybe would like to be. So it's a weird double mirror situation. And also it would just reminded me that unfortunately some of the sexiest things you can do are so close to assault, basically, or the bad things to do to a person, because watching somebody shower when they are consensually attracted to each other is extremely horny and very cool.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is maybe not anyone's fault because of culture or whatever, but yeah, it's there's obviously a lot of things are cool and horny when everyone is on board, but the problem is sometimes only one person is on board and does them anyway.
Yes, that is a big problem.
I mean, I think it might just be a result of the insane narcissism of Robert James Waller, but then it becomes an interesting complication in the story where the woman who is a not repressed exactly, but understimulated Midwestern housewife is also from southern Italy. You know, she's also this old European world, maybe former sophisticate from these places of, you know, fierier passions in classical literature or something. And the Heathcliff who's sort of igniting her loins is an American guy who's like older than her. So that's just sort of an interesting riff on what you might expect. There's also this element that she is from the outside world and was brought to America and sort of neutered in so doing, and he is an American who his life seems to be leaving, going to other places to take photos for National Geographic.
Accidentally or intentionally, it seems like the film is reminding us that this is not a state into which women are born, to quote a very famous element of the second sex, but rather something
Iowa?
that they... Yeah, the book's a lot about Iowa, I should have mentioned.
So he's in Madison County, Iowa to take pictures of these bridges. We didn't even get to that fucking part.
Yep.
Mister not going to interrupt me.
We skipped past it. Well, you got into the details of the showers. I thought you were going to give like a big bird's eye view.
Yeah. So they are so fucking horny for each other and they have sex on the floor. Obviously, you have sex in front of the fireplace when you're committing adultery. Everybody knows this. There's a sort of maybe we shouldn't do this moment because there is a woman in town who had a relationship outside of her marriage who has become an absolute pariah to everyone except, of course, Robert Kincaid, who is worldly and cool and just shows her basic decency in the town's diner. They decide to consummate the relationship. Meryl also has a moment where she regards herself in the mirror and seems to like see herself as a sexual object once again. I don't want to get gross or anything. I feel like Meryl has been very generous in her choice of body double in this scene. She really, well, I mean, look, why not? It's not fully Vera Farmiga up in the air. body double where it's just obviously a different person in a Vera Farmiga wig. But it's yeah.
I will say that I recently saw, mostly out of boredom, the Emma Thompson film "Good Luck to You, Leo Grand." I don't know if you're
yeah.
And in that, there's a pretty long scene of her standing in front of a mirror, nude. And it did feel like, unfortunately, by comparison, the much braver version of this, to have an older woman show her actual body and be thinking about it in terms of her own life, what she's achieved or not achieved as a person sexually.
Emma Thompson also apparently in the running for this role and was listed in the
she
David
must have been young, though.
The David Starrett. Yeah, she was, I think. She'd already been betrayed by the demon Kenneth Branagh, though. So I think... she's lived a life. She was listed as one of the Europeans considered for the role, which I don't know if I fully agree with. I mean, obviously, it's politically loaded to say that Britain isn't Europe, but I would say that
they even fully agree.
I would say British people are not European in the sense of
they classically talk about the continent as a separate place. So I think they agree with you. I think it's fine to say.
So they do the deed. And then there's this moment where Robert says, come with me, run away with me, join me in my life that is, I think, necessarily lonely. And one man, it's only one person can do this, can sort of van life around the world, taking photos and writing poetry down that you don't even necessarily mean to do anything with, and getting off the train, it turns out he's been to Bari because he got off the train there because it looked nice.
Yes.
And, speaking of horny things, I do think that describing a quick meal one has had in Italy is a form of sex. It's deeply, deeply erotic. I was thinking about just like my own squares of pizza eaten standing up on the corner of the Largo di Torre, Argentina in Rome.
And she's asking all the right questions. Were you seated near the door or near the church?
Yeah. And the striped awning. Yeah. Then she ultimately decides not to. So the kid, by the way, we didn't mention that the kids are discovering all of this. There's a sort of a
frame narrative.
Yeah. I was going to say almost a Princess Bride type.
Yeah. Because they come back to it several times. Yeah.
And they're one of them needs to go get some air. Either because he is disgusted by the son is having a much harder time with this than the daughter. Either he's disgusted by this or he's so horny he needs to go outside.
Okay.
So they can't believe that their mother would do this. And then it turns out that she decides to stay with her family. And it's I think it's up to the viewer to bring their own exact proportion of reasoning to it. How much of it is that she knows that the 4 days of it all is part of the juice. How much of it is her wanting to stay with the family that she's made. How much of it is her wanting to protect the family that she's made from being treated like Lucy Redfield, the adulteress in town, is treated. But it turns out that after this, she never went a day without thinking about Robert. And also, she brings a pie to Lucy Redfield, acknowledges her humanity, and they become best friends. And they talk to each other all the time about their sexual agency. And this becomes a rich part of her life.
I believe other things. They make a point of saying that she didn't actually reveal her history with Robert for 3 years or something into the relationship. Yeah. So I think the suggestion is just having been awakened as a person just freed her up to talk about all sorts of stuff.
And we learn that both her husband, Richard, has died, 10 years prior to the events of the story. And Robert died a few years after that. And she only learned of this when she got a box in the mail with his cameras in it, which I found that scene very moving. I will say that I was not fully bought into the hype of the film until like old age makeup Meryl came into. Like, it wasn't until the actual romance was in the rear view that I became moved by the film because I didn't realize that it would involve so much of these decisions not to run away.
Seeing her as her entire life, not just this hot moment.
Yeah.
And then it talks about Richard dying. This is another, like the kind of heavy hit that could easily be a huge misstep. But damn, is it hard when Richard says, I know you had dreams and basically I didn't make you happy, but I love you so much for having been with me.
I've got it here because our friend Aaron from Hit Factory sent me the scene basically as like Tumblr GIFs that it seemed like he had them hotkeyed.
Okay. All right. Well, actually cut the part where I said it. Give it to me.
He says, I know you had your own dreams. I'm sorry I couldn't give them to you. But, I love you very much. Something like that. And she is... What's very affecting to me is that she doesn't say anything back to him, I think because...
But she puts her head against him, yes, sort of saying, like, I am also happy for what we shared, regardless of how it affected me.
I immediately paused the film and made my girlfriend insist that she would indeed tilt my head up to give me a water for a pill as I die.
Oh, I thought you were going to say break up with you if you weren't satisfying her dreams, but great.
No.
It's about you. Perfect.
And then, she herself dies and they realize that having her cremains, which is a real industry term, scattered at Roseman Bridge, where his were as well, will allow her to... She says something about, I gave the rest of my life to you and to the kids and Richard, and now I want to be returned with Robert to...
Yeah, I want to give myself in death to Robert. Yeah. And then we see some reform on the part of the kids. Carolyn...
Right.
Well, first of all, she now feels very close to Lucy Redfield, which I kind of understood, and I thought was a nice note. Yeah. But the two kids are, I think, representative of the two healthy responses to this, which is maybe a little pat, but I was okay with it at this point. So the son, he is in a marriage where he's kind of over his wife for not paying attention to her too much. Right. Yeah. So he goes back and says, I'm sorry. And, do I make you happy, basically, and wants to listen to her as a person all of a sudden. Yeah. And Carolyn is freed in the opposite direction and says, what, my marriage has been garbage for a decade and we're going to get divorced.
And I think this brings us to kind of what the movie is saying. I think I wrote this out, so let me know what you think of this. But
please,
I was thinking it in the context of a movie the year prior. That's another Spielberg adjacent film, not an Amblin film, but made by one of his most successful proteges. I was comparing it to Forrest Gump in my mind, which is...
Great call.
Thank you. A movie about white baby boomers, or a movie in which white baby boomers look back on the mid-century social mores that they see themselves as having transcended and destroyed. And it's that movie's very self-congratulatory. Look what we did. We did... we invented Elvis and Martin Luther King, and we survived...
and maybe
Vietnam,
there was some bad stuff, but that's part of who we are.
Apple Computer and AIDS and
Smiley Face,
North Korea, South Korea, Marilyn Monroe, and this film takes I think a more suspicious view of the evolution that boomers think they're responsible for, because Francesca and Robert are both, the generational politics are, as our friends on Citations Needed have said, bullshit. They are superstructure. But they're of the greatest generation. They're of the parents of the boomers. This film is showing that they're not like unknowing cogs in this social machine that is going to go on churning forever, if not for like fucking Allen Ginsberg or whatever. They know that they are living within roles that are expected of them that are not necessarily what they want, and they're chafing against those expectations, and they're negotiating ways to stay sane within them, and they ultimately make decisions based on those social expectations that also take into account the welfare of the people around them, which I think is, I want to be careful not to be like a return to tradition guy here, but I think there's a way that especially baby boomer type, Abby Hoffman type, specifically white resistance to like, I don't know, maximum hair lengths for men at their job kind of protest movement stuff. There's a way that is very self-centered and uninterested in a broader like social context.
Yeah, I think you made a beautiful comparison here, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm misunderstanding you, but I think you're highlighting a pretty classic conflict between like humanistic readings of culture or of specific people, which are maybe not bad, but do tend towards what you're talking about, sort of individualistic, maybe even self-centered, ignorant of larger social pressure or structures.
Right. Yeah.
Versus this film, which I totally agree with you. It's great because it understands that people are preoccupied with their experiences, but that doesn't mean that when they look at the world or at art, we have to limit our focus to like personal assessments or behavioral critiques as the extent of what we're capable of. We can recognize that subjective experience is all that we have access to, at the same time that it falls within like bigger guiding matrices, like just human perception or cultural context or material and historical and economic forces. So it's not anti-humanist, but it's humanist with a recognition of like how that is an atom in the universe or something. And maybe that's fine because the people in the story are atoms and that's all they can see. But as a piece of art, we can try to think about bigger things.
One, what does Francesca joke that she's going to do with the rest of her afternoon if she doesn't get in the car with Robert, but split the atom? She's joking,
It's a good line. It's charming.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think I'm going to hit you with another big one.
Do it.
I think this is Clint's second remake of Shane.
Oh,
because he's like
interesting.
The cowboy who sort of rides in out of the dust. And rather than driving off the strip miners, he, how do I put this? They have sex. And
it's less metaphorical.
He also, I think, to one specific person, not that she was necessarily among the people actively shunning Lucy Redfield, but she just didn't reach out to this even more marginalized woman in her town to say, I see you, Jake Sully style.
Yeah.
And so he shows up and basically shows her the true colors of the world. He, in a very real way, like a photographer, shows her like a new way of looking at things. And then he can't stay. There are no guns in the valley. There's no exotic dick in the valley, and he has to leave. And she now returns to, as she says, her life of details, but she's got like a new way of looking at things a little bit.
This is great reading.
Thank you. I also think, not to get ahead of ourselves, but this is more of a, you mentioned the second sex. This is more of a third sex. This is third wave feminist idea that you can choose to be a housewife actively. And obviously she's not an agent with absolutely any options available to her, but she makes this decision to stay in her house and like raise her children and be with her husband and be a participant in this community rather than saying, fuck the community, I want to do what I want, which is honestly a fairly interesting idea coming from Mr. Libertarian Clint Eastwood. Yeah.
It's not choosing to prioritize your personal desires. And I want to highlight a couple aspects of what you just said. One, even though you're saying that this is more of a third wave idea, shout out to Simone. She kind of sneaks it in, so ahead of her time. But the idea that
she got a great ass.
Yeah.
The third film.
Yeah, I'm not going to try. But the idea that
I'm not on the take. I'm not gonna take the money. I'm gonna get shot in the face in the movie in the middle of I got a sheepdog and a weird hat.
Yep.
All right.
That's Frank's Erpico.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that like vanilla, which I'm using here as the equivalent of choosing to be a housewife, is a fine choice only when you are offered other choices. This is, I think, an idea that Simone de Beauvoir reckons with directly, saying that unfortunately some of the things that women are basically lambasted into doing, they could be fine choices for people, but it's impossible for them to ever be because they're not presented as choices.
The forced choice, yeah.
Right. And I will say, I'm not sure if this is disagreeing with your reading, so tell me, but I don't know that I totally believe that it's just that she's like deciding to stay and deciding that that's the better option for her. Although I think that's part of it. It also seems like she understands that the having had this experience will maybe be enough to transform her life. And that option is better than the having had the experience of being married, but going with Robert Kincaid.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, look, we are looking at this from a very different perspective, even excluding the part where we're white men from comfortable backgrounds. I mean, in the year of our Lord 2023, the idea of walking away from a farmhouse that presumably is paid off because it's like in your family and like you can grow your own food. Yeah. You got like more than one structure on your property. Are you fucking kidding me?
But are you a madman?
But she is deciding to include other people in her decision, whereas he, by his nature, and again, he's kind of he's a fantasy. This type of man, to the extent that they exist, is annoying. Usually, they at this point would have white dreads. I'm thinking of a guy like a van life guy I saw in the park.
I know lots of these guys, the digital nomad types.
Yeah. And they usually just they ultimately like work in marketing, and they just like use the Wi-Fi at a McDonald's to
or they've just inherited a bunch of like parking lot owner money or something.
Man, we got to get into parking lots.
Yeah, well.
But so she knows, I think, that it wouldn't quite work. Once you've, fart in front of somebody, the relationship is different.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think better, but it just is different. You'll find out what it's like when that happens, true. when somebody gets diarrhea and you have to take care of them and like ask them through the bathroom door if they're okay, kind of thing.
You can't go back, even though I agree with you that I think it's better.
My girlfriend has never had I'm the one with the diarrhea. She's everything about her is normal. Yeah, I think it's also there's something going on interesting here where Richard, her husband, is the kind of ideal man that like a Josh Hawley would be proud of.
I think this is one of the details you referenced that saved this movie. If he was a bad guy, much more boring movie. But he's nice. He just doesn't pay a lot of attention.
He's a farmer. He's a family man. He's like a big, broad guy. He's honest. She specifies that he's honest and he's clean, Jordan Peterson style. He cleans his room. I was relieved. I was thinking, well, thank God the first thing my girlfriend is going to tell anyone about me is not that I'm clean.
She's obligated to pick a different quality to highlight.
Exactly.
Yes, it's true.
But he's the cuck. And we're going to have another cuckolding film coming up next week.
Yeah, AP.
This is also the beginning of Clint's run of bestseller adaptations, we should say. This is and do this, Absolute Power, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, brief stop off with Space Cowboys, and then Bloodwork, also a bestseller adaptation.
Although I think most of those, I take it back. I immediately retract my statement. I was going to say that those are closer adaptations maybe, and I think what makes this film great are largely the ways that it diverges from the original book, but all those films make their own choices. I will say that he is a like lo-fi pixie dream man in a certain sense, but again, in the book and for Robert, the real man, seems obvious why that is appealing to present yourself that way. But the fact that the film is about her awakening and we see her thinking about things unrelated to Robert and just reflecting on her own life. And it's not entirely because of things he does, I'm going to contend. I think that's part of the shortcoming of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl, right? Is that they come in, they do all these things that inspire, a man traditionally. Natalie Portman inspires somebody to look at their life differently.
Have fun exploring the infinite abyss.
Listen to the Shins, exactly. But I don't know that it's almost like
gonna knock you on your ass.
The famous line
before,
but it's more like she's taking advantage of like just a different type of guy to rethink her life. Like it could almost be any type of guy who's very different than her husband. Doesn't have to be the special artist man with a unique outlook on the world. She just kind of needs somebody to make her realize that her life as she's lived it wasn't necessarily the way that she wanted to live it or the way that she has to live it for the rest of her life.
Yes, exactly. There is something about her being brought. We were talking about mail order birds or mallard order birds before.
Yep.
And now I recalled a time that you and I went to the movie theater together to see David Ayer's Fury.
Ah, yes.
The Brad Pitt haircut movie. And at one point, Ian gets up and I assume goes to the bathroom and then just never comes back. And
this is correct.
Was confused, but I figured he's a grown man. He's doing whatever he's doing. And I drove my car here and he doesn't have my keys. So worst case, he like walked home or something. And I come out of the theater to see Ian hanging out at one of the bar tables near the part of the landmark in West LA.
West Side Tavern.
Rest in peace. The part where they would put the Michelle Williams's costume from The Greatest Showman or whatever. He's sitting on one of those bar tables, and I said, "What's up?" And Ian said something to the effect of,
"Fuck this movie. I was too mad to keep watching the film," which I, in retrospect, can recognize as maybe something that was going on with me, not just the movie. Yeah. But I do think that the film, the part that set me off that Jake is referencing, is in the film, one of the young soldiers immediately wins the heart of a German or French woman in the village that they are occupying, that they're violently occupying as a military force, branch of the U.S. Armed Forces. And the idea being that somebody that we are supposed to be sympathetic or won over by, even if this is a kid, right? Even if this is a kid just like meeting a woman, I think this is the idea that Ayers is trying to get across, right? Like, look, humans find each other even in these awful moments. But that is an example of humanism that doesn't recognize the world, right?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on the Fury point. And I think David Ayer has proven himself to be a bonehead who does not need to be given any benefit of any doubt. I think the situation here specifically is, I believe that they met after the war.
Yep.
She was charmed by this man, and it offered a way for her to get out of post-war, bombed out, small town Italy, which, to invoke the third wave of it all, like, she's an agent too.
She is. And I think it's maybe recognizing a bigger material force above the material force of like, modern colonialism or imperial war or something, which is
God's will.
Just yes, the greatest force of all. Yeah. No, the idea that, like you're saying, you maybe just pick the best of the bad options economically.
Right. The lesser of two evils.
Right. Oh, like God, Master and Commander.
I just saw The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Everybody says Demeter in it, although I've always pronounced the goddess's name Demeter. But anyway, this is the movie about the boat from Dracula.
Oh.
They made a movie out of it.
The one, are you talking about the boat from the production of the original film Dracula? Or are you talking about the boat
from
that crosses the Caspian Sea or whatever?
It's literally based on the captain's log section of Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Oh, cool. I love this.
Great special effects. A lot of crazy looking guys with crazy looking facial hair. The film was a little too long, but it looked cool. And mostly I'm just glad it exists because when the trailer came out, someone posted a meme that was the beginning of Master and Commander with all the, what year it is, Napoleon's armies are across Europe or whatever. And then it just said, oceans are now Dracula. which shout out to whoever made that. Really good. And I was thinking about it the whole time, and I was enjoying myself.
Sometimes those guys on the internet, man, and I say that inclusively.
Yeah, I mean, I think lesser of two evils. Sometimes you gotta get on the bus that's leaving right now because that's what you can do. And I think I loved the time that I spent visiting Italy, but I know that it wasn't 1946 Italy that I had a good time hanging out in.
And I'll drop a bit of knowledge that I wouldn't have had if I saw this film 3 months ago, but I was just reading about Italian agriculture recently. Bari is located in a part of Italy, which is like the Iowa of Italy, basically, in terms, even though very beautiful, recommend going there. But it's in the midst of southern Italy, southeastern Italy specifically, ton of farmland, ton of mass exodus migration because there's so little opportunity there. So unfortunately, I don't know if this was exactly the case in the 40s also, but she traded one Italian Iowa for American Iowa, which is even sadder.
Now, your parents are from a part of Northern California where I would imagine they have some close-minded views about other parts of the United States. I hope that's fair to say.
That's right. Yes.
If your father is going to describe, for example, someone at Disney World who is behaving in a bumpkin-esque way, if your father's going to accuse this person of being from a state, it's Nebraska? Okay, my dad's an Iowa guy.
Interesting. Yeah. I think Iowa too close to Chicago, maybe.
So, have you been to Iowa?
Never been. Is this, my uncle also went to Purdue. Is that Iowa or what is that?
It's a chicken company.
Indiana?
I don't know where Purdue is. Okay. Purdue might be Indiana. Yeah. I went to the surprise of no one. As a 16, 17-year-old, I spent
I know this.
2 weeks in the summer at the Iowa Young Writers Studio, which is where little twerps get to go pretend that they are Frank Conroy at the University of Iowa Writers Workshop. And I, of course, made quite a splash with my short story, Gene Hackman Goes to Six Flags and Brings a Gun, which all the fellow writers enjoyed, and the teacher of my little colloquium thing pulled out his Motorola phone to play a sound clip of the famous "Where's the Beef" commercial to ask me, what do you care about?
Great. He destroyed your ass appropriately. Hey, do you think great.
Shout out to Jason Lewis.
Still playing Where's the Beef for yourself, just as a morning eye-opener.
He wrote a novel with a companion album that I supported on Kickstarter, and I got and read, and I enjoyed.
That novel, The Bible.
Yep, and now I believe he does gear reviews on YouTube of new tech stuff, which,
hey,
sure, fine.
So you were in Iowa.
So I was in Iowa, one of those places where you can see a thunderstorm coming 4 hours out.
Yeah.
I had a weird inner ear problem the whole time I was there. And was also having a weird codependent thing with my high school girlfriend the whole time I was there. So I intentionally didn't have a good time.
We could be coming to understand why you can't imagine a fantastic, hot-blooded Iowan romance, because you would probably have an inner ear problem when you were at this farm.
Well, there was a girl there who wanted, I think, to have a hot-blooded Iowan romance with me, and I simply was not available physically, emotionally, relationally. And so when she and all the other, the guy who made me sit down while he read the entirety of Chuck Palahniuk's Guts short story to me, when they all crept out to the graveyard after we were all supposed to be lights out, and they weren't drinking or smoking, they were just hanging out
art style,
communing with the dead. I, of course, was not participating at all. I was in my room being sad. So that's my time in Iowa. They have a place there, and this is in Iowa City. They got a place there that does, they call it a pie shake, which is a milkshake where they put a whole slice of pie in it.
That's some Midwest shit right there. Yeah, I'm imagining you as Robert Kincaid, Meryl Streep, inviting you over for dinner and drinking one of your sodas, and you're slapping at bugs and thinking about how your mom said something to you before you left.
There are a lot of flies in this movie, which I appreciated. There's a lot of flies on screen.
Well, that Guillermo del Toro line about, did you want to make realism just, use the takes where the flies come on screen?
Cool. That's good.
Yeah.
There's notably a fly in Unforgiven flying around Little Bill's head when he's talking to W.W. Beauchamp.
Great.
And I think it's great when there's a fly in there. But yeah, I don't like bugs. I don't like humidity. I find it hard to do romance when there's humidity also. Romance is a dry heat or even a like an autumnal chill would be nice for a romance. Yeah, any other thoughts you have?
Well, I am thinking about the fact that you've kind of blown my mind a little bit because I watched this film at the main farm I work at night in the dark.
Wow.
And my screen was attracting a bunch of flies. And now I'm wondering what percentage of the flies were on-screen flies.
It's like that screensaver thing that's like a pug licking the screen from the inside, and Ian's like trying to rescue the dog from in the computer.
Yeah.
Damn, that's crazy.
Wow. Oh, well, I have another thought.
Maybe they thought it was porno. Maybe they were trying to get to the flies.
Who knows what this
screen.
film was for them? Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to, because I was thinking about why this works and other similarly interested in the surface of romance and things that we've already thought about a lot and maybe shouldn't be that interesting to us.
Squishy.
Yeah. For some reason, I use the word maudlin every single episode, so I was trying to use that word.
Treacly.
Okay, great. There we go.
There you go.
And there's a scene
Emma
in this
Thompson
film.
knows what that is. She said before.
Yeah, Turkish delight. There's a scene in the film that I think is maudlin in this exact way, and for that reason, it was very ineffective for me. The scene when Robert drives away because Francesca has decided not to go with him. There is a very heavy musical sting. Do you remember this part?
I do. I will say, exclusive of the music, I actually found this to be very affecting because he is very hesitant to make a left turn away from her, from Winterset, Iowa, from this life that could have been. And I have found that in my life and in a lot of like end of relationship moments, driving is of course involved with it, and you're struck with this, the weird frisson between the speed at which you'd like to move emotionally and the speed that you have to move in like legally in a car, you know.
I get this completely. Not a big driver, but getting on a subway after a breakup and heading to a stop that you are now thinking about in a different way because you're now a single person who is no longer with the person that mattered to you the most. And now the place feels different. I get this.
New York, baby, greatest city in the world. You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us.
That's Spider-Man, baby. But what I was going to say, this musical sting, which I hated, the reason that I think it doesn't work, the reason I think this type of film often doesn't work, and the reason that I think Clint lets us down sometimes in these circumstances is because he wants to say something that we already know and we have already been told in multiple, much more effective ways. So putting the music on there feels like an insult to our intelligence. It feels like maybe, whatever. Like putting honey on top of a cake or something, right? You already have this rich thing that is extremely sweet, and you're saying, hey, in case you didn't notice, I wanted this to be sweet.
Yeah.
I'm going to ruin the whole thing for you.
Now, the main love theme from the film is called Doe Eyes.
Okay.
In parentheses, love theme from Bridges of Madison County. Composed by Clint Eastwood and Lenny Niehaus.
Okay.
And Patrick McGilligan suggests that he called it that in tribute to his then girlfriend, perhaps fiance, soon-to-be wife, Dina Eastwood. Dina Ruiz.
Dina Doe Eyes Eastwood.
She does have large eyes, like a doe, I guess. That's a female deer. They met in 1992. She was a TV reporter and interviewed him, and she's from Oakland, and they hit it off, and they were, I think, dating at this point. So perhaps it's in reference to her. I think, as we go on and Clint starts doing more and more of the music for the film. Oh, I did want to mention also Kyle Eastwood appears briefly on screen as the bassist in the blues band that they go to see.
I missed this. Yep.
And there is also a way that blackness and black culture are used by white people chafing at white morality And,
yes.
and you know,
there's a little bit of Norman Mailer action.
Elements of it are picked and chosen to point at as like, hey, look, these people who are of the earth, who are closer
authentic
to their
expression.
So they're closer to some kind of animal nature, all this kind of bullshit. So, you know, I know Clint loves the blues. I know Clint loves to think that he's a black man in a white man's body, but he very comfortably gets to go into all the places that white man bodies get to go. So
yes. Yeah.
Nice little shout out there. But I think reckoning with the stress that this kind of itinerant man would put on a woman's heart and life is an interesting thing for Clint to be exploring at this point in his life, certainly.
Yeah, that's why I'll contrast. I don't know if it's exactly the main love theme that gets used or some variation thereof, but later, if not the very, very last shot of the film, one of the last shots, there is a helicopter shot of just the house, and then the love theme plays, and that to me is effective emotional work, because you're recognizing that this is a unremarkable visual scene, but you want to project to the audience, you know, the changes that have happened. How are we supposed to feel? How has she changed her opinion on this place that she occupies? So to put the love theme over it, wonderful, right? Because you're saying, look, the place has not changed physically. It's the exact same. When the kids arrive, I think we get the sense that for them, you know, nothing has happened, right?
Hey, Mom, we had a deep fried Twinkie at the fair.
Exactly. And this has been the biggest moment of her life.
We saw a huge cookie.
Yeah, sometimes kids are the worst at that. I will say the
Talk
very
about
beginning
flies.
of the film.
If you ever go to the baking contest part of the state fair where the cakes have been there for weeks.
Just Fly Central.
Fly Central, yeah. Forgot to mention the screenwriter. Should shout out Richard LaGravenese, who he wrote The Fisher King.
Sounds like an Italian himself.
He wrote The Fisher King on spec. He also wrote The Mirror Has Two Faces for Barbra Streisand.
Title I love.
And then he's one of those guys, he's got his name on like a million things. You know, the Ref with Dennis Leary, A Little Princess, The Horse Whisperer, Beloved, Water for Elephants, Unbroken. He and the Coen brothers are both credited on that.
I remember that being a big part of the promotional campaign.
The Comedian. With Billy Crystal and Josh Gad.
Oh, okay.
Not the comedy.
I'm thinking of the comedy.
He also has a story credit on Disenchanted, starring the voice of Griffin Newman.
Yep.
And he's directed a few films, directed a movie called Living Out Loud. And then, oddly, in 2007, he wrote and directed 2 films with Hilary Swank in them. Both came out in 2007. Freedom Writers and P.S. I Love You. These are both, I think, post $1 Million Baby Oscar, like Hilary Swank movie star films.
Wave.
And then, interestingly, he directed the absolutely dead on arrival Twilight Come Lately film Beautiful Creatures, starring Alden Ehrenreich and Jane Campion's daughter, Alice Englert.
Oh, okay.
So that's interesting.
Oh, and Emma Thompson and Jeremy Irons and Viola Davis. God damn.
Yeah, I mean,
also famous author Thomas Mann, dead these many years. Okay.
I'm more of a Mr. Conductor man. You know, like a Thomas Mann. Is it
Thomas the Trank Engine? End the episode here.
Thomas the Trank Engine. Hey, this guy's getting the friggin' Fantastic Four done. Remember that guy? Vaping with Tom Hardy. Vaping and playing Call of Duty.
Yep.
All right. Quick shout out to production designer Janine Opawal, who she's the art director on Tender Mercies. She was heroically married to Paul Schrader for about 10 years in the 70s.
Wow. Cannot imagine.
Yeah. She does production design on Desert Hearts, which is a nice lesbian love story from 85.
Yes. Letterboxd favorite.
Ironweed, Primal Fear, the year after this. LA Confidential, an extremely well production designed film.
Yes.
Pleasantville, another movie about nutting so hard that you see the world differently. Snow Falling on Cedars, Wonder Boys. So like the whole look of these movies from the 1990s that sounded so boring to me as an 8-year-old. Catch Me If You Can, another extremely well production designed film. Seabiscuit,
another extremely Spielberg film.
The Good Shepherd, The Happening. And then she, interestingly, is kind of now the films that she works on are sort of emblematic of the type of movie that doesn't get made anymore. So these last gasps. So like James L. Brooks' How Do You Know? Warren Beatty's Rules Don't Apply. Adrian Lyne's Deep Water. So she's
these are right out of the late 80s, early 90s.
And yet not. You know, Ian, that I'm no stranger to a surprise number 2. And so now I'd like to drop surprise number 2 on you for the show. I'm considering your brother's participation surprise number 1.
I haven't stopped considering it. For a while after that, I was sweating pretty hard for some reason.
I'm sorry. I didn't want it to hurt you.
No, it didn't hurt me. I was excited. It just reminded me that real human beings listen to the podcast and not just weird guys who email us.
And real heroes.
Yep.
Also, the guys who email us are nice. I mean, it's nice of them to email us.
No, but they only exist in my brain. That's the difference.
Oh, sure. I'm going to send you a link right now. And what I want you to do is read the link aloud and then click on it and tell me what you see. So I'm going to send it to you now. What does it say?
It says shootingyourselfinthehead.com.
Okay. And now, where does it take you?
I've opened the link. Slight delay indicative of homemade HTML. Oh, baby. We got podcasty4me.com. Redirect.
I bought it.
You know what? Is this brave activism along the lines of putting the National Suicide Hotline up saying, hey, think about something else? Or is this going to be the final straw for somebody to have heard this podcast?
That's something I've been thinking about. I don't think anyone in that situation is going to go to shootingyourselfinthehead.com to find out whether or not they should do it.
Well,
so I'm thinking it's just a funny joke about 2 things that I would say have similar health effects.
Okay, great. I will say that in the worst depression of my life, I certainly Googled around suicide, just kind of skirting the area as a way to pass the time while being very close to the thing I was thinking about. And I will say one of the best pieces of advice I got, maybe a therapist cliche, but I think pretty clear-eyed therapist told me that, hey, if you're thinking about killing yourself today, just remember that you can always do that tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I thought that was legitimately great because it's sort of saying, like, I'm not even telling you that it's not the right thing for you. Just saying that if you wait, you still have the option of killing yourself. And if you kill yourself, you don't have the option anymore of being alive. And I think that's a good attitude to bring to listening to this podcast. You could always listen to the next episode.
Yeah. Well, I think that's also what Bridges of Madison County is telling us, is that you have options.
Yes, no matter how late in life.
Yeah. So shootingyourselfinthehead.com. Check it out, folks. Got the SSL certificate.
Oh, wow.
Wouldn't steer you wrong. I mean, it's just the same certificate for podcastingforme.com.
Okay, but great that we don't have to get the, what do they say, dangerous website?
I don't think so. If I have to, somebody should tell me. Anyway, thank you again to Ian Ryan for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about what? Wait a minute.
Hey, hold on. I thought about doing the same bit, saying we got a special guest today.
That's funny.
My friend, Jake Serwin.
It's me. That's my name. Next week, we're talking absolute power. This is, to my mind, an absolute blast of a film and also a very good episode. Peek behind the curtain. We've already recorded the episode. Wonderful episode. We're going to be joined by a special guest that I'm still not certain actually appeared on the show. It's just so hard to believe.
You've kind of obliquely referenced him today. So think back, listener.
It's when I said John Wilkes Booth. That's who I was thinking of. So many Johns. Was it Gielgud? Was it Taffer?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, John Taffer's going to be on our Absolute Power episode. So check that one out. And if you want to watch that film, we highly recommend that you do. You can go on over there to Max, DirecTV, if your uncle has that, and all the regular places. And now, if someone's in the Mexico area, where can they check out Absolute Power online?
If they are north of the border, Guatemalan border, that is, they're going to be able to find Absolute Power.
Good point.
On Amazon and Apple TV.
Man's on the TV. Man's on the TV.
Now,
do you have any idea who this is?
Impossibly is my father.
Manzana TV.
No, I'm gonna guess.
It's a really stupid joke. Like it's
okay. Is this sounds kind of like P. Diddy?
You're in the right profession.
Manzana TV.
Maybe I'm thinking of the wrong guy. Give it to me one more time.
Manzana TV.
I could tell this is gonna be one of those ones when I listen back while editing that it's so obvious to me.
This is, of course, Chris Ludacris Bridges of Madison County.
I fucking knew I was close.
Yeah. Manzana TV.
Move, bitch! Get off the pod.
Yep.
Great.
We'll do.
Stupid.
Yep.
Oh, I did want to mention this. I don't know why. In my head, this is a film that I knew of from just osmosis and probably seeing it like on the cable guide. Jim Carrey and fucking sick mind. It just reminded me of this film that I would see playing on the cable guide late at night. This was a softcore parody film.
Okay.
Of another movie that in my mind was like identical, indistinguishable from this film. This was a softcore parody film called The Witches of Breastwick.
Wow. This is the type of thing that drives me crazy. Makes me insane.
Women's breasts.
Yeah. These things. I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but
Ian's got this machine where he turns a crank and it slaps a table really hard.
Yeah,
but
no, this total disregard for pronunciation in parody.
Well, but it's also like a pretty good pun, except it doesn't work at all. But it's like sort of it's beyond what you think the people putting these together would think of. I guess it is an important part of marketing those kind of films. Like it's This is not the Witches of Eastwick.
The Witches of Eaststick. How this is right there.
Well, that sounds kind of scary, though.
Yeah. Well,
what if you don't want that?
Some people like.
And what
that.
if we don't even know if the witches have breasts? We can assume, but we can't be sure. Ian has left the call. Fucking hell, man. Well, anyway, that's gonna be our show. Remember to subscribe, rate us, write a review. It helps us on the algo. If you like the show, tell a friend, tell your dad. Write a novel that tops the New York Times bestseller list. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pod Casty For Me. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, or you're interested in co-hosting a 2-person Clint Eastwood podcast, you can email us at podcastyforme@gmail.com. Also visit us at podcastyforme.com or shootingyourselfinthehead.com. And thank you to Jeremy Allison for our artwork. Thanks again to Ian for rejoining the call.
My pleasure. Only for the latter.
Join us next week for Absolute Power.
Thanks so much, Jake, for the work that you do.
Hey, thanks, man. Ian's referring to my work as I'm in the CIA. No. This isn't Chapo.